Great. So, very good evening, everyone. Today we have the 12th session, and we are discussing shooter games, the genre of shooter games. And this is, I think, the third session since we are continuing this. Uh, we are trying to build the game that you see in the video on the left side, and we have discussed some of the topics already. Uh, like in the last session, we discussed sound and coroutines and a few other topics. And before that, we discussed different kinds of first-person games and uh, what, uh, how to make them, how to uh, make the players and stuff, how to use starter assets in Unity, all those things. So basically, today and we'll try to cover these things. Raycasting, where basically we'll use raycasting to create the shooting, which we started with last time and we stopped in between. So we'll complete that. Then we'll add the enemy character. We'll see uh, what are the things that we need to add with the enemy character. We'll not add the animation and stuff right now, but we'll add the character. Then we'll see how to actually implement the shooting, how to actually implement the enemy health. After that, we'll have a look at the few effects that you see on in the video, like the muzzle flash effect and the sound also, but you're not able to hear it because it's not in the video. But all those things, a few things. The shell casing is coming out of the video, out of the gun. So these kinds of effects, we'll see how to implement those, and we'll have a look at something. This is again an asset pack provided by Unity called as the Unity Particle Pack. So we'll have a look at what that is. And then we'll move on to making the uh, enemy move inside the uh, environment, which is using the nav mesh, which is a different concept. So if we get till there, then we'll spend some time separately on this concept of nav mesh, and then we'll come back to implementing that concept here in this game. So that's the agenda for today. And let's move to our game now. So this is where we are. This is where we left the last time. If you remember, we have the level, which is our environment. We have the player. Inside the player, we have a camera, which has the gun. And the last time, we also created the shoot point. And inside the player character, we created this script known as shoot script. And in this script is basically where we are writing our code to shoot. So what we did last time was basically create a key binding for this function on shoot. If you remember, we created this key binding shoot and made it to left mouse button. So obviously the benefit of doing this is now I can just add uh, bindings here where if I want to add a binding for gamepad and let's say the right trigger button is, so gamepads have triggers on top of them, right? So I can add a right trigger also. So now if I use a gamepad, I'll be able to do it just like that. Similarly, I can add other bindings. So this is the benefit, if you remember, of using this new asset, new input system. And then this is where we are at till now. And what we did was basically, if this function is called, then we were logging shoot. So if you remember, that was the last thing that we did, and that was the last working thing that we saw. So this is our console window, and whenever we are pressing the mouse button, it's shooting. So now we'll do two things. We'll add the code to actually shoot and implement that. And one more thing is that we'll add a crosshair to the game. So if you've played any first person shooter, any third person shooter, any shooter game, there's generally a crosshair in the center of the screen where basically which indicates that this is where you're shooting from, or this is where your aim should be. So we'll implement a very basic version of that. Obviously, there's a lot to be done with that. If you have played some good AAA games, you might have seen some animated crosshairs. So that also can be done, but we'll start with a very simplistic one, and the one that is most easiest to make, because right now we just want an indication for our player to just see that this is where he's shooting from. So for that, what we'll do is we'll create a new uh, raw image. We'll go to UI, we'll create a raw image, and in this raw image, we'll call it crosshair. We'll go to canvas. We'll change the canvas to scale with screen size. And our reference screen size that we're using here is 1920 cross 1080. And match it with width and height center. And then in the crosshair, we'll make it in go to 2D screen and check the crosshair where the crosshair is located. And if you remember, how we can shift it to the center is by pressing Alt and Shift if you also want to change the pivot point. So just now it's in the center. It's a bit big. So let's make it smaller, maybe 30 cross 30. Yeah, that looks okay. And for the raw image, we'll basically use a texture. So this texture is like what exactly do you want to show on this image? So we want our thing like our crosshair to be circular for now. So we can use this knob, which we get in like we are getting from the UI package. Somewhere we already have this texture. The texture is basically just an image or a sprite image. So we use, because this is a circular, obviously later we can change this if you want. And this thing, and then let's change the color to dark red. Okay. So that's it. Now basically we have a indicator that this is where our player will be pointing to when he's shooting. So this is how it's going to be. And you see we are getting some error while we are doing this, and this is because the event system that is created when I created the canvas is the old event system. I have to replace it with the new event system. So there's a button here that does that. So as soon as you get this warning, just change it, and then now you won't get this error. So that's it. And one thing more that we can do is basically make the gun a little more seem like it is pointing towards the crosshair. So like it's right now it's a little bit more, can be a little bit more arranged. So let's go here and maybe just bring the gun in a little. Near estimate that does look like the pointer is actually coming out from the gun, and I'm able to move around with my pointer. Wherever I go, my pointer is moving with the gun and my gun is moving with me. So set up the initial setup for the crosshair and the gun. And now let's move on to a script where we actually want to create this whole thing. So last time we just created a lot of variables, if you remember. And basically we have a purpose to all these variables, but we created all the variables to public, which we might not need. It's generally a good advice to keep as much private variables wherever you can and as required. So, and private variables, but we do want to access them in the inspector window, so we can just serialize the fields. This thing we don't even want to see, doesn't matter. This thing we might want to see. Next pair is just basically we'll see the use of this rate of fire. If you remember, this is something that we created to basically create after one click how much longer it should take for the next click. And next fire is something that will help us do that, help us actually create the rate of fire. So we don't need to see this rate of fire inside the inspector. So that is why we have not serialized field this variable. And this also we can. So these are all the variables that we want, and now we can delete this part. And now we'll do if time dot time is greater than next var. So this basically would calculate time dot time is basically the time at the beginning of this game. So like time from the start of the game, whenever I click play in the Unity editor, and when I start the game at like I start the exe of the game, that is the time this time is actually representing, or basically the time when I start this scene or this script starts basically. Uh, so this time would represent that time. And if this time is greater than next fire initially is 0. So this becomes, if this is greater than 0, then I'm allowed to fire. And what I'm doing is basically every time I do this, I'll add uh, next fire, and whatever that to next fire, the value of next fire will change to whatever the time was plus the rate of fire. So what this is doing is incrementing my next fire to a little bit more so that I am immediately not able to fire the second round. And then whatever my current ammo would be, I'll have to decrease that by 1. So current ammo minus minus, this is fairly straightforward. And then the actual implementation of the shooting thing. So now I'll do if this also, this is going to be an if statement where we'll check uh, whether the raycast. So this is how the raycast is implemented. So we'll check physics dot raycast, and we have a shoot point, if you remember. So this is the point that we created there. So this is a point that we created here to basically shoot from. So this is a point that we want the player to shoot from. I don't know why the screen is flickering, but I hope it's visible to everyone. So this is a point that we created inside the camera to basically tell the player that this is where they have to shoot from. So this is my camera and this is the shoot point. So this is in the center of the camera's viewport. And so the first thing that I'll give it, so raycast, this physics.raycast takes the origin. If you can see this, takes the origin, then takes the direction, then the maximum distance. Then if you want to give a layer mask, the layer mask those things. There are like, if you can see, there are 15 overloads possible for this whole thing. So we'll use one of the simplest things that we want and only the things that are required by us. So shoot point, sorry, dot position. So I'm directly able to use position because shoot point is a transform and not a game object. If I would have taken a game object here, then shoot point dot transform dot position would have happened. I want the origin and then I want to give a direction. So shoot point dot forward would be my direction. Then if you remember, we created a variable raycast hit. So this is a variable that will store the information about the hit. So, and then I will have to give the maximum distance up to which this goes. And then if this happens, then what do I want to do? But before I go there, let me write one more statement, which is a debug statement. So we have seen debug.log till now. So there's a debug.drawArray statement. And in this statement, again, we have to give a similar, there are again, we have to give these things again, shoot point position, shoot point forward. So like the origin and the direction. And then the direction we have given, then we have to give the color. So I'll give color dot red, and then I have to give the duration that this thing should be visible for. So I'm just writing a code that makes it possible for me to see this ray in the editor. Otherwise, I won't be able to see this. So here I'll just write 0.1f, although because the shooting is very instantaneous, so I'll not be able to see it for much longer anyway. So let's go back here, and in our layer capsule, my shoot point is defined, my current ammo is defined, rate of fire is defined, and weapons range is defined. So it's quite large right now. All the values are quite big, but we're just debugging right now. So let's see if we are able to see the ray. Let me go on top. So this is where shoot point is here. So this is where the ray should come out of. Choose that. So see a ray. Are you able to see that? So wherever I point, I'm able to see a ray. I hope you see this thing coming out here. So that is basically how we debug rays. So like just in case I might have mistakenly done something where I placed this shoot point somewhere static. So it was not basically, let's say, placed on the parent, like let's say it was placed somewhere here in the scene. And now if I shoot, so this is where debug ray would be beneficial. And if I move around, it's still shooting in the same direction because my player is, the shoot point is not attached to the player and it's not moving with the player. So I don't want that. I want it to be with the player. So once again, just checking. And it's working. So now we'll write a few more lines of code. So if you want, you can keep this. If you want, you can remove this. For me, I'll just comment it. And now we'll write a few more lines, few more if statements. One more if statement, which should be basically to check where the hit is happening. So this again requires a collider in the collision should happen. The ray should collide with a collider in front of it. And how does the ray, how do we know we are getting the information in hit? So wherever the hit goes, the transformer of that hit, transform of that hit is saved in hit variable that we created. So this out hit, what we are doing here is basically telling the this physics.raycast thing to save the information in the hit variable. So now what we can do is we can access the it dot transform dot tag and check if this is, let's say, enemy, which is a tag that we'll create. If this is something, then we'll say again, let's do debug.log for now. So this is where we'll say debug.log enemy shot. And if not, if this is not the case, basically, if it's somewhere else being shot, we'll say again debug log, and we'll say something else shot. So this is how we start. And now going back to our scene, let's create an enemy, and also let's position our player a bit better. Actually, let's start our player from this side. So if you remember in the video, this is the scene that you see. So let's set up the player there only, just to make it similar. And to do that, what I have to do is go here, here. That's it, my player is set up. And I also want to set up an enemy. For right now, what I'll do is create a new 3D object, capsule, and I'll place this capsule over here. So this is my enemy. And how do I actually make it an enemy? Not by changing its name, but by giving a tag to it. So we don't have an enemy tag. If you remember, we have to add a tag, and we'll add a tag enemy. But this does not assign the enemy tag to this thing. So we go here and we now again attach the tag. Now it's attached. And now let's go in our game. So now if we are shooting here, it's saying shot something else. But if we shoot here, it's saying enemy shot. Hope you're able to see. Something else, enemy shot, enemy shot. Cool. So this is the very first step of implementing this system. So this is how raycasting is implemented. This is how we'll implement the shooting. So now let's add an actual zombie character, enemy character. So for that, I'll be using asset right now, but obviously you are free to add your own characters, either to create your own 3D models or bring 3D models from somewhere, but you are free to do whatever. And I have a zombie package. This thing. Let's view it here. So this is a free package of zombies. So we'll access it and you can add it to your assets, and we'll just import. Once that is imported, this is a folder that I get. So it has a scene also in it. Let's see what that scene is. So this is an example of what this package contains, what are the animations and stuff. So if you see, this package contains some animations like this, which we'll use at later sets. There's walking, there's running, there's attacking in a way, then dying. So we can use these animations as is. And then what we actually want to use is one of the prefabs. And let's go back to our scene. So our scene is named sample scene. Let's change that to main scene. So in our scene, we'll import a prefab of, let's say, zombie one, and bring that here. And we can delete this thing now, this enemy capsule collider that we created. But remember, like, why was this enemy working for the capsule? Is basically because of this collider. So if I remove this and go back here, and I start shooting, and even if I'm shooting here, it's still saying something else shot, right? So I don't want that to happen. So that's why we have to use the capsule collider. And now I can delete it, and we'll implement the same things on our uh, zombie. And I can see that this zombie has a animator, which we'll come to later. So for now, I'll just remove this, and let me place it again where the it's a bit small, so let's scale it up a bit. Looks okay. And now let's go in the scene and see if anything has changed. So now when I shoot here, obviously it won't work because right now the zombie does not have a collider on it anywhere. So one more thing that I want to do is basically unpack this prefab so that I'm able to create my own prefab to use later. So in prefab, I'll go and unpack completely. So now this is not a prefab attached to there. I'll create my own prefab and I change the name to enemy and underscore zombie in case I want to create other type of enemies in the future. So now this is my prefab for the enemy. And I can similarly do the same thing for the player as well. I can unpack it completely from the other part and create a prefab of the player. And in this thing, what I also want to do is remove this capsule from the player. So this player has a capsule attached to it. I just want to update that and override supply. Also, my player does not have the capsule anymore, but it has the same things are attached already. So in my enemy zombie, I want to attach a collider. Now this collider can be a box collider or a capsule collider. The best efficient to add a capsule collider because it's kind of in a similar shape to a humanoid shape, but also we can add a box collider as well. So for now, let's add a capsule collider. I have to change the settings a bit. So you have to ensure that the whole of the body of the zombie or the enemy is covered inside it so that wherever you hit, this collision takes place. So this seems enough. And then we have to assign the tag enemy. Now this thing is working. Something else, enemy, something else. So now if you see, basically because we've used a capsule collider, even if I shoot here, so you can see that the crosshair is not pointing at the enemy, it's pointing a bit towards the left of the enemy. It's still going to say enemy shot because the collider is actually covering a little larger area. And that's what we actually want, because when we are in movement, when we are actually playing the game and it's fast, we don't have the time to aim exactly here. So even if the aim is here, that should count as a shot. This is how you make the game more likable by the for the player. And just apply all the overrides so that our prefabs are updated. Great. So next, what we want to do is we have to add. Uh, so like we are shooting right now, but nothing is happening. So what is the next step? What are we missing here in this? So there, what we'll do is we'll add a new script, and we'll add the script to damage the enemy. So we'll give this enemy a health as well. So let's say we give them a health of 100, and each shot that we fire takes out a damage of 10. So we can kill the enemy in 10 shots. So let's implement that. So we'll create a script. It's called the script enemy health. Everything here, what we need is a few things. So public float enemy health, function public right deduct health. So this is a function that we'll call from the shoot script when we are actually clicking the shoot, and we'll create a variable here which also will be passed from that script, where what all we are doing is basically passing a value that every time uh, the enemy shot, this is how much health you can reduce. And how this helps us is basically what we can also do is create different sections in the collision. So like right now we have created one whole section. If you have played first person games, you also might know that uh, different parts of the body carry different weightage also. Some uh, games do this. So like your headshot will be a kill shot. So like you can kill an enemy with just one headshot. So we can create a separate section for the headshot where we create a separate collider, which would be uh, like a circular, like a sphere collider. But for that case, what we'll have to do is we'll have to create separate components. We won't add it directly here. We'll add separate components so that we recognize where it is being hit. And once we recognize that, we can implement different kinds of hit mechanism. But our base code, this thing remains the same. So we'll send this value from there separately. So for the headshot, we'll send 100. So, and for this thing, for a body shot, we'll send 10 or 50, like depending upon how complex we want to make the game. So for right now, this is what we'll just keep one thing. And then what we want is enemy health equals to enemy health minus deduct health. So it will subtract this value from this. And then we also want to create a function, call it void enemy dead. So what happens when the enemy is dead? And here what we all want to do is basically just destroy the game object. For now, later we'll add animations and stuff. And we'll write a check here. If enemy health goes below 0, then call the function. So this is all that's there to this, uh, to basically adding the health script, and we need to attach the script to the enemy. So attaching it here, and now going back to our player and our shoot script, this one, we'll add some things here. So how do we do that? We also need to create a new variable now, which would basically control enemy health. Detecting enemy health with each shot. So I'll create a float damage and give it a value of 10 for now. And also I can serialize this field. And that's it for there. Here I can comment this out or whatever, but for right now, let's just keep this as well. I can remove that as well later, but just to see if this is actually happening, we'll keep the debug and we'll create a reference to the enemy health script. Health, let's call it health script. And how do we get that script? We'll get it from it.transform.getComponent. So if the tag is enemy, then we know that that enemy we are already getting this transform from the hit. So and we also know that if the tag is enemy, that uh, game object is going to have a component of the enemy health script. And next, all we have to do is enemy health script. So it should be script dot deduct health. So this is the function that we created there, and the value dot we want to pass is damage. So that's all. Let's go and see if this is working. Sorry. So my enemy I have here, and enemy health is 0. Let me see 10. And in my player capsule, oh sorry, not 10. Let's make it 100. And in my player capsule, my damage enemy is 110. So I'll have to click 10 times to basically kill the enemy. So one, and I killed it once itself. Like I said, it's something wrong. Enemy health is 100 and damage is 10. That should not be happening. This is supposed to be minus equals to mistake here from my side. Now that's one, and let's see zombie. So now let's keep note of this enemy health and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's how it's done. I basically uh, wrote this wrongly. I wrote this as enemy health equals to minus deduct health, but like this is a common like standard format in almost all languages. X minus equals to y means x equals to x minus y. So this my mistake. So yeah, so that's how we implement shooting and enemy damage as well. So we have implemented this part as well. So for the next thing, what we want to implement is basically this thing: weapon effects, muzzle effect, the cartridge effect, and the sound, like basically just shooting sound. But before that, I'll want to show you this particle system and what exactly all this means. So for that, I will take you here again to the package manager, and we have a package called as particle system. So basically, particle systems are let's ask Unity Google what is particle system Unity. So particle systems are basically a pages something else. This is what I wanted. So simulates and renders many small images or meshes called particles. So like these are very small meshes or they can be sprites, and the particle system is responsible for simulating them, and basically it's actually used to create visual effects like the uh, muzzle flash of the gun and uh, rain or fire and things like that. So this Unity provides us with a free. Uh, there are two packs that are available. One is this pack, and one is like both are have similar assets. So I'll share link with you, or just search for particle pack and you will find it. This one is an older version. This is a new version. So it's best to uh, add these packages to a separate project, because I think I've taken a warning short image. If you import it in a uh, uh, project where you are already working, this is a kind of warning that will show. So importing a complete project, because this particle pack is a complete project in itself, will override your current project settings, and it has some project settings that will basically override your uh, project. So Unity provides this new method, this which was not there earlier, which was a switch project method. So this will basically create a smaller project or a temporary project for you. Or basically what you can do is just create a new empty project, which is what I did, and imported the particle pack there. So I'll open this up. So in this project, I've imported both the particle packs systems and also the standard assets, because there are some small particle effects in the standard assets also, which you can see and try out. So this is like I'll wanted to, I don't know if I've written it here, but I also wanted to show you how to export a package. I'll just write it now. Export a package. Not sure if we have done this before or seen this before, but this is a very good use case for this, because now what I've done is imported the particle pack somewhere else. and I want to take some parts of this to my game. So how do I do that? So we'll see that. So this is a scene that is available to us in the particle pack. And if I play this, I have a player that can move around and some effects that are displayed here. So these are what particle effects are. So like this one is fireball, um, flamethrower. And basically if I go in the scene and see what each of these effects are actually. So like I've seen the fire thing right now and I've seen the fireball. So this is what it actually is, uh, the particle system. So it's, you can see here, it has some different components like emission, shape, velocity over lifetime, and only some of those are activated to basically create that effect that you saw, right? So there are various resources available on this that you can refer to. And if time permits, we can come back to this and have a small session separately on particle effects and how to create our own particle effects. Because right now we are using particle effects that are provided to us for free from somewhere else. And obviously, not just Unity provides this, there's free resources available on the internet as well. Various people are providing this. So this is what a particle system actually is. It's basically a component that you can add, and then you basically use the settings that are provided to you here along with the material that you want and different textures and shaders and colors and emissions and all those things. You're basically able to create a beautiful effect. So going back here, you'll see that there are a lot of effects that are available in this pack, and you should definitely explore it on your own. Uh, so not just this kind of effects. If I go forward, there's these effects as well, and then everywhere there are more and more effects. The effect that we want is a muzzle flash. I don't know where it is. We'll find it in the this one. This is what we want. Muzzle flash. And one more effect, which was available in the particle pack, the old one, the 5.x particle pack. Uh, so our effects are available in weapon effects and prefabs. So one is muzzle flash, which is this one. There are two here. So I've grabbed one already. I've exported that. And there's a cartridge effect. So how do we actually export it now? So let's say I'll give you an example with the cartridge effect itself. Right click and export package. And it will basically include the dependencies along with it. If I don't want that, I can do that. But generally you would want all the dependencies that you need, and it will maintain the folder structure that is here. So it will take the effect examples folder. From that, it takes the weapon effects, then materials, prefabs, weapon effects, models, all those things basically from this folder, and then a shared folder. And all I need to do is just export. And I've already exported this, but just for uh, reference, and go to desktop and test export. And that is basically all you need to do to export a single element from Unity. One project to basically use it in another project. And this particle pack is something that you should explore on your own. And also the standard assets pack is here, which we have talked about before. So this also has some particle system examples, uh, afterburner and dust down. So these are some things that you can also check out. So if you see, this is right. You can use this like fireworks are there. So this is what basically particle systems are, basically visual effects. And now I can close this project and come back to our original project. Here I will import the assets that we have created, which are here. So for the effects, there are three things that I'll import. One is the muzzle flash, and importing that Unity package is basically very straightforward, just drag and drop. One method is to drag and drop, another method is to right click and import package and custom package. And this, then you can import whatever you want. Really to drag and drop for the muzzle flash. And I want the cartridge eject. And I also want an audio which I have, which is for a gun shooting audio, this one. And I'll add it. So this again, I downloaded from a royalty-free website. I forgot the name. I think it's Pixabay or something, which you can check. So I want the audio to be in the audio folder. So that's it. Now I have all my assets in place. Let's actually try and place the muzzle flash. So the muzzle flash will go under the where the gun is. So the gun is under main camera, and this is where I would add the muzzle flash in front of the uh, barrel of the gun. So example effects example is where I have the folder for the weapon effects. This is my muzzle flash. What I have to do is take it here, this thing, and bring it near the gun. So I'll have to position it a bit. I can just first of all zero it out. You see the direction is the opposite direction. So we'll rotate it to minus 90, minus 180. 180 would also do. So now, and basically increase the size a bit. So, and rotate it a bit towards our direction. Now it's almost at the gun. This one, like there's one more muzzle flash effect, which is a bit more interesting. You can try implementing that, but the concept remains the same. So I'll use this one only. So now you're able to see the muzzle flash. Now we basically, I'll have to control this in the script. We don't have access to it here. Like we don't want to use anything here. We'll control it using scripts. In which script will we do that? Would be the shoot script itself. And in the shoot script, we'll create a few new variables to basically store this muzzle flash. So yeah, so variables for open effects. So first for muzzle flash, we'll create a new particle public. You can make it public, or you know, by now you understand where you want to use public. You can also use serialized field if you want. So public particle system muzzle flash, and then I will create a start method here. We don't have a start method here. So when the game actually starts, so like you can see that this is playing whenever I touch it, it just starts, keeps on playing. So what I want to do is basically stop it during the initiation of the session. So I'll go to this and do muzzle flash dot stop. So it's like a clip. So you can play and stop and pause. All those things are possible. And then I'll create a separate function to actually start it and implement the next functions. But right now we are out of time. I have another engagement. So this is where we'll stop for today. And from the weapon effects, we'll continue in the next session. Hope we covered these things today in next session. Sorry, next session we'll cover the other things. So that's it for today. Are there any doubts?